Okay. That confusion between Heathcliff and Catherine was cleared up only for Catherine to be, well, surgically removed from reality. Well, most of them. This is what happens next. As they were driving through District 20 towards wherever they were going next, Sinclair was surprised when the alarm sounded and green lights appeared, which stood out more in the normally monochrome environments. Ishmael noticed this as the lights were still green, even if they were largely used to the randomness. Faust didn't think that it was likely that the lights evaded the color-draining side effects of T-Corp's singularity, determining the partial retention of color as due to Walpurgis nights being a transitory moment where numerous possibilities collided. This made sense to Dante. Faust then went to the driver's seat and shut the alarm off. The return of Walpurgis night excited Don Quixote, as this would stop her from getting bored due to the quiet period after their time at Wuthering Heights. Faust then noted that there was something else that appeared. Dante questioned her about that. Faust informed them of a new mirror dungeon that appeared. Heathcliff understood this as he rose from his seat. It was only a matter of time before they'd get a new one. This happens every time they conclude a primary mission, as in outside of distortion hunts, although he didn't expect it to happen on Walpurgis nights. He also wanted to test it out, readying his baseball bat. Then Dante saw that it didn't say revenge on it any longer. He had changed it to remember. A few days at least have passed since Wuthering Heights. He was using that time to sand and carve that word on it. Dante understood why he did that. It was due to Catherine, one whose memory of her existence had been erased. They didn't bring this up to the others, as only they and Heathcliff would understand. He thought that it was getting tedious, wanting to bash them sods. Virgilius thought this as nice. He liked seeing some initiative from them. Faust confirming this, advising that they should move without delay, telling Dante to take them to the corridor. They did so, trying to suppress their discomfort towards Heathcliff's enthusiasm. It certainly wasn't optimistic passion. It was then they noticed that there was 2 types of doors rather than just one. One was clearly the mirror dungeon. The other 2... Otis questioned if there was paper coming from the 2 doors that weren't the mirror dungeon. Sinclair, even noticing how sparkly it was. Dante saw that they had an odd gleam of light, besides the radio frequency lines. Roger didn't think that it would connect to Lobotomy Corporation HQ like the last one did. Gregor was asking if he could hear... Well, was he hearing jazz music? Heathcliff saw this as more a window than a door. Dante saw this too, as they saw blurry shapes moving on the other side of it. Yi-Sang noticed this as well. Faust was silent, possibly due to her understanding that they figured out enough. Although Dante understood what that look meant, that they needed to get in there in order to find out what's there. Faust confirmed this, seeing this increasing competence to be a positive development. Dante then saw what was on the other side, a field of green, and a wall of tall, giant trees. But this wasn't surprising by itself. Roger thought that it was nice to have the colours back. Massot agreed. Then he saw an abnormality. Dante understanding this to mean what they saw earlier. Massot he recommended that they prepare for combat while they remain unnoticed. Dante didn't need to tell the others what they were, so they were ready to charge into battle on Dante's order. It felt different this time. So they told Faust that they have Walpurgis Night more or less figured out. Faust told them to continue. Dante saw that there's something different about these abnormalities, asking to explain why. Faust considered every abnormality as like an encounter with a summoned entity, yet there's a difference between them when encountered in the Mirror Dungeon or a Refraction Railway. Yi Sang wanted clarification. Faust then identified where they were is inside what was once the library. A building that appeared above what used to be the Botany Corporation HQ, specifically within a book where an abnormality resides. Dante remembering that a few of them spoke of this library, remembering the Molar Boatworks and the Blade lineage. Yi Sang concurred, yet the space was distinct from containment units in the branch facilities. At least compared to the basic appearance of those, containment units, this book was the ideal habitat for the abnormality. Faust compared it to a terrarium, where the abnormality transformed the place to a form that's better suited to it. For example, a fish-like abnormality would fill it with water. A worm-like abnormality would fill it with soil. Anime come to life would fill it with colourful insanity. Yi Sang understood, as did Rodia, where as long as it exists there, it will make it appear however it likes. Faust confirmed this, and added that it's because it's outside of the Equip-Off deterrents. That also makes this possible, and Rodia saw this as free housing. Then Don Quixote, who was far from the group, registered what was told by Massot, and she was excited to find out that they were inside a book, which was inside the library that vanished like a mirage. This enthusiastic shouting resulted in something that would only be attracted by something loud, and Massot noted to add a preamble in the future to prevent this. Yes, Otis pointed out that this attracted attention from the fairy festival. Dante ordered them to get it over with and fight it. The fairy festivals fought alongside its minions. They fought the fairy queen and the fairy masses. The fairy masses were killed and eaten by the fairy queen, and once they were wounded enough, and also once they were all eaten, the fairy queen focused her appetite on the damned dozen, so they had to defeat her quickly before she could wipe them all out. Yes. As she had a ravenous appetite when facing the librarians of the library. Never mind those who were even more unsuited to the task at hand, yet somehow were able to manage it. After suppressing the fairy festival, Dante remarks that it was way harder than they expected. Faust explained that they were in the library's past. Well, likely before the library was moved to the outskirts. But of course they don't know that part. According to Faust, they were in a battle within the library. The purpose of which was to attain the realization of the flaw of history, which, based on the fact that it needs 2 books from the gaze office, those prosthetic users, it was likely around the Urban Plague chapter of Library of Rowena. Dante didn't understand what she said. Ishmael asked if there were other flaws. Faust confirmed that appeared to be the case. From what she knew, like normal libraries, it composed of several floors divided by subjects such as literature or religion. Dante didn't see it as straightforward as an average library. Dante asked Faust if there was anything more than she was telling them about the library, something more detailed. Faust was unable to tell them. Dante understood that she didn't know about that yet, and Faust confirmed this. She had no reason to keep this any more regarding this. She couldn't keep this to herself, as she was clearly shocked by this understanding from Dante. Then she regained her calm. She's yet to become a Faust that has access to that information. Perhaps she has hidden cybernetics or some form of augmentation that feeds information into her brain. Well, it's only speculation, as we don't know that much about her, and we won't know until her group therapy session happens. This confused Dante. She told them that, as their journey continues, she'll gradually expand her knowledge. She sees Dante's consistent, continuous improvement to be a positive development. Dante understood that the farther they go, the greater her knowledge. Well, it might explain why she was silent in the middle of her lectures. However long the journey would be, Dante jokingly said that they might end up at the library one day. Okay, that's a bit difficult, as the library was in the outskirts. Then they returned to the others, who were wandering around the scattered pages of the abnormality, and likely continue to fight this abnormality until they had mastered it, and then they returned, presumably to deal with the mirror dungeon at some point. Sometime after dealing with a distortion, along with the appearance of the Mirror of the Wuthering, along with facing the Fairy Festival abnormality during the Third World Purgus Night, somewhere within the alleyways of District 20, Don Quixote was laughing excitedly, being more obnoxious than usual. This was due to her going over the newspaper, chuckling as reading some articles. Dante was mildly annoyed, understanding what this meant, understanding that she'd continue to try and draw their attention until they acknowledged their presence. Eventually, Dante asked what was she looking at in the newspaper. She spoke of how Limbus Company, an upstart as it was, needed to keep up with events, such as what was in the newspaper, like she and Mersault does every day. Well, since they were in District 20. Gregor more or less told them to humour that blonde lunatic, understanding that this was a reminder of Mersault's morning routine. Dante understood this routine. He woke up at the crack of dawn, sat on a chair, folding one leg over the other at an exact 90-degree figure, 4-leg lock position, and then read the morning newspaper. Yes, the figure 4-leg lock position. Gregor understood that he left that kind of impression on her, expecting that she'll be back to normal within a week. She then asked if they were paying attention. Dante then asked if an article mentioned them. Don Quixote was surprised that they got it right, and Dante was surprised as well. Apparently they were on page 3, disappointed that they weren't on the front page. Well, it's clearly not a tabloid, otherwise there would be some pornographic content on that page. Rodia would, she was thinking that they're starting to put their names out there. Don Quixote and Rodia, they couldn't have drawn more attention from others without amplifying their voices and singing Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. They attract enough attention, regardless of how it's put. Don Quixote mentioned that it was regarding the dramatic conclusion to the mysterious disappearances of District 20, where the article mentioned the mysterious case had been revealed to be none other than the doing of the prestigious Edgar family, which appalled the general public. Now, this was still a sore spot for Heathcliff, so Dante advised that she move on from that and asked what it said. She mentioned that with small assistance from some wandering bystanders who happened to be lost in the area, and with the most admirable heroics of T-Corp Class 3 collection staff on the scene. Seriously? They certainly never let the truth get in the way of a good story. They were referred to as wandering bystanders, as Yi Sang pointed out. Ursus was offended at them being treated as if they weren't there. Sinclair pointed out that Limbus Company wasn't even mentioned by name. Rodia was critical of this article as T-Corp was taking most of the credit when they weren't even there. Massault mentioned that this was within the expected range of behavior of the news media. Yeah, different worlds, same. Some resources are not entirely reliable with giving trustworthy news stories. That's true in our universe. It's even more true in a world ruled by megacorporations that govern each district like it's their own private fiefdom, with the head being the monarch. In each district, the one in charge of the wing is the government, and they would likely have an interest in controlling the narrative. If it makes them look good, they'll take the credit for anything they can get away with doing so. If it makes them look bad, they'll deny they have anything to do with it. Now this disheartened Don Quixote, hopeful that there are those that seek to interview them after reading that article. Ishmael was much less optimistic regarding that, sarcastically saying that they're bound to look for wandering bystanders for an interview. Dante doubted that they'd attract attention, advising not to set herself up for disappointment. Just as they were speaking this, someone was slowly but smoothly walking between them. It was a Class 2 collection staff member who asked if they were employees of Limbus Company. Gregor asked who they were, as the staff member wasn't alone. The collection staff told them that they're already aware of the reason for that. Don Quixote welcomed her. She had awaited their arrival, asking when can they begin. Roger was questioning, is she actually there to interview them? Dante was surprised that Don Quixote wasn't losing her mind at nothing. Faust wasn't informed of any interview taking place. Roger asked where Virgilius went, then asked where she put the leftover hair gel from Heathcliff's makeover. Seriously, that's what you're thinking of? I think that can wait. Well, I suspect you have bigger issues to worry about. Don Quixote told her to commence with the interview. She then did so, but it wasn't anything to do with the interview. As Don Quixote, who didn't take all the credit for what they accomplished there, who said this at the same time as the collection staff asked how they'd be willing to make their tax payments in installments. Confusing both, as they clearly didn't understand the confusion. It turns out that they're the tax people, and they're from the T-Corp Time Collection Agency. They're there to collect on overdue time tax. Yi Sang didn't see them as bringers of good tidings. This made no sense to Ishmael. They paid their time tax in full when they went through Nest Immigration. Virgilius said, then we flash back to a few days ago, Ishmael asked if they didn't need to pick up a timepiece for each of them to carry, reminding Virgilius that all must carry a timepiece there, which he was fully aware of, but there was room for an alternative that offered more flexibility, which was not listed on the pamphlets. Outsiders that seek to have a short-term stay can pay the time tax for the length of their time within District 20. Yes, time to be exempt from the relevant obligations. Instead of abiding by the rules, or rather the rules of T-Corp's Nest. One of those rules being that you must carry a timepiece. Besides, there's so much red tape that's needed before a timepiece can be issued. So it was easier to pay 30 days' worth of time tax before entering the Nest's borders. Urtis noted that it couldn't have been cheap. Don Quixote wanted to wear a watch like what Urtis had, which annoyed Urtis as it wasn't a fashion item. Virgilius reminded them that Limbus Company has no budgetary concerns. They take care of such expenses. Well, within reason. Ishmael was impressed that they're operating like a real professional company now. Back to the present, Dante believed that there was a minor miscalculation, asking if they fell slightly short of the time tax paid. Ishmael doubting that they've been there for 30 days. Heathcliff was sure that they could pawn away their stuff for this. Yes, to pay for this. Looking at Honglu and Sinclair, implying that he'd be expecting them to pay for the shortfall. Sinclair agreeing to do so if it came to that. Honglu was concerned as he didn't pack much up for, well, when he left. Gregor wanted to hear how much time tax was owed, and the collection staff told them that they owed 10 billion and 40 million on? Me. That's a lot of time tax. To put it into perspective, the Kane office hired the Gaze office for 200 million on. And that was to look into a singularity of W Corp. So they're clearly in deep. This surprised Dante. Rodia laughed nervously, asking if she was hearing that right. Honglu commented that he'd need to stop at his place as, well, regardless, I doubt they'd wait that long. Sinclair asking what options they had if they didn't or couldn't pay the tax. The collection staff implied that they'd pursue them to the gates of hell in order to collect unpaid taxes. And this has additional meaning, as There was once a wing that generated power by tapping into hell. A wing that was destroyed by White Knights, the most powerful abnormality so far, even more so than Baba Yaga, which was kaiju-sized. Well, regardless, the collection staff made it clear that she didn't see can't pay the tax as an option. Their only options are to make the payment with time or money, with interest. Gregor wanted to know what was meant by making payment with time meant. Dante remembered that this was mentioned before, but didn't care to know what this meant. Dante asked Yusang, who had lived there for some time, and also Heathcliff, who was born there, if they knew anything about that. Yusang didn't once fail to make time tax payments when he lived there, so he didn't know what would happen if it was overdue, and payments wasn't possible. As for Heathcliff, he never got involved with taxes, neither when he was in Wuthering Heights, or when he was with the dead rabbits. In the case of the latter, Matthew dealt with the taxes, although he did see some get dragged away because they failed to pay. Dante didn't see this as helpful, and as they were about to ask Faust, who was more likely to say something useful, Otis was about to threaten the collection staff, seeing this as completely unreasonable, asking what kind of shoddy calculation led to this figure. She claimed that tax collections, or more specifically the calculations made to determine the amount of tax owed in T-Corp, was always exceptionally reasonable. Yeah, I bet they are. Well, as a certain detective in a certain dystopian movie would put it, one thing is true of all governments. The most reliable records are tax records. Seeing the clock ticking, asking if they lacked both the capacity and the will to make the fair payments, Sinclair advised to not escalate this, asking for a time out. Yisang saw his choice of words as unwise. Otis was unconcerned. They can cry and whine all they want about not wanting to escalate things when they have that much arm. Otherwise, his opinion has no value. Telling him to shut up and stay out of her way while they deal with the obstacle that dares to stand in their path. Ryushu was excited about the death that would be coming due to over 10 billion arn. The collection staff corrected her by saying that it's 10 billion and 40 million, and then they proceeded to fight the collection staff for real, when on previous occasions they were creations of the fathoms of ego of Yisang or the Refraction Railway. After subduing the T-Corp collection staff non-lethally, a staff member in a different uniform approached as both sides were on the defensive. This was a Class 4 collection staff member. Otis asked if this was the ringleader. Ryushu wanted to know this as well. Yisang saw him of a higher rank than those that they've been fighting, but he's under T-Corp's employ. He's concerned that meeting their demands with violence might lead to a direct confrontation against the full force of T-Corp. Oh no, it's the District 11 Nest immigration checkpoint all over again. The Class 4 collection staff member ordered them to lay down their weapons. Should they refuse to cooperate, all of them might be considered hostile individuals, and they'll use force to... And this was encouraging to Ryushu. She liked this. It was thrilling. She might as well have either Party Hard or Get Ready to Die by Andrew W.K. in her head. Roger saw this as a bad situation. Dante saw this as a great time for Virgilius with his intimidating, glowing eyes to... Then Massault completed that sentence by saying, appear. Gregor commented on how there's been a spectacular return to form after the much better treatment between them. Moments a day, or few before. Hinting that not a lot of time has passed since Wuthering Heights. Roger told him not to glare at them like that. They had their reasons. They showed up out of nowhere and tried to extort a whole 10 billion arm. The Class 2 collection staff member corrected her by saying 10 billion and 40 million arm, to be exact. And Gregor was irritated by the collection staff member saying that. Roger told him that there's no way that they owed them that much money. They're kind, law-abiding citizens. Well, 11 of you certainly are, although one of you has a history of being in organized crime. Don Quixote added, who are brewing with a sense of justice, which Roger confirmed. Oh wait, no, let's see. 2 of you have a history of organized crime, although one of you only applies to District 20. The other one, it applies to District 25, and the third one, well, that was the case of them being made into criminals due to a law that made them so. That wasn't there when they arrived. Virgilius listened quietly for a moment as the damned dozen chatted on like they were part of a comedy skit. I mean, what would that make the Red Gaze? A heckling troll? He agreed that such an amount of tax does seem unreasonable. However, it was a mystery to him how none stopped to think for a second about the troubles that they might spark by starting a meaningless scuffle like that in the middle of the street. Gregor struggled to speak the words that would be fitting for this. Virgilius sighed and did his part to defuse the situation, which the damned dozen were unable to. He talked to the Class 4 collection staff and found it regrettable that this incident has led to bloodshed. However, that much time tax is unacceptable. It's not the kind of money that they could simply fork over in the middle of a street. He made it clear that it would have been more appropriate if some context was provided as to how that number came to be, instead of marching up to them and demanding that they pay the time tax. Clearly he sees both sides are at fault. T-Corp for demanding payment of that much in the middle of the streets, and the damned dozen for provoking them with violence. The Class 4 collection staff admitted that the absurd amount of time tax for them is unprecedented. Yes, most unprecedented. They were even summoned to an emergency meeting with a relevant officer to address the severity of this incident. Understanding Virgilius, suggesting that the conversation be moved to the collections office in the relevant jurisdiction area to discuss potential solutions. They proceeded to go to what is essentially the office of the T-Corp tax people, the kind of people that almost everyone runs away from. I say almost because even the tax people would think twice before provoking the head. At the nearest time collections office, Dante found out that the truth behind this absurd amount of time tax levied upon them was far simpler than expected. A Class 2 clerical staff member spoke of what happened a week ago. which involved a large-scale, unauthorized temporal leakage phenomenon that was observed at Wuthering Heights, which shot them up several stages in the progressive time use tax, bracketed, due to the immense amount of time leaks. Gregor didn't know what she meant. She then spoke of a deceleration in the flow of time within a certain physical field, and it wasn't a static one. It moved all over the manor for a good while. 4 hours worth of time. Heathcliff wanted to know what she was talking about. Oh, that must have something to do with Dante's recent time dilation field ability. Yi Sang figured that out as well. This was to help them to pursue Erlking Heathcliff. Massault didn't see how this was the case, as Dante's ability was activated for less than 30 minutes, believing this to be a calculation error. Yi Sang silently suspected that there was more to this, as they experienced an odd sensation as they departed, asking Dante if they recalled what happened after they left. A few days ago, after they left Wuthering Heights, but before the next distortion hunts, Massault noted something was off. Don Quixote asked if there was something off with his daily routine. At this point, most of the others was keeping to themselves, especially Heathcliff, who had a sorrowful look on his face. For understandable reasons, considering that he lost Catherine in the worst possible way. Well, the only one that didn't feel this down was the ever-cheerful Don Quixote. Massault was thrown off by an anomaly in his routine. And this can be harder to deal with for that autistic bloke. I speak from personal experience. Yi Sang was interested in what he had to say. Massault knows, he mentioned that they should have been issued the morning newspaper, not the evening newspaper, which was inconsistent with the amount of time spent inside Wuthering Heights. Don Quixote asked if it was an innocent mistake. Massault didn't think so. As long as he's been with them, morning newspapers have always been delivered during designated morning hours. The same applies with evening newspapers, with evening hours. Them making a mistake can't be completely ruled out, but that's minuscule in the probability of happening. Ishmael saw a sunset, although it was difficult to determine. Yes, difficult to determine, as there was a lack of colour. Don Quixote thought that it was early morning. Yi Sang had an idea as to how this, inconsistency came to be. Heathcliff did as well. It was the TT4 protocol. As in the flow of time being altered, which for some reason caused them to be in there longer than they thought, compared to outside Wuthering Heights, as in Lobotomy Corporation. It allowed Aeon to accelerate the flow of time. Dante didn't know what that was, so Heathcliff told them that it was temporal velocity synchronization device. The ad for that including the words, "A luxury solution to all your time synchronization needs. Enjoy equally leisurely hours together." Don Quixote was impressed and surprised to find out that Heathcliff had a larger vocabulary than she previously believed. She asked for it in simpler language. This made Heathcliff barely able to resist the urge to smash her skull in. Yi Sang explained that it equalizes the velocity of time for all those within it under TT4 protocol's influence. Don Quixote considered it quite odd how someone so affluent in time was moving and speaking at the same speed as the rest of them. Massot observed that time seemingly moved faster within Wuthering Heights than outside. Was it slower compared to outside? Well, regardless, it at least explains why he has the evening newspaper instead of, well, the morning newspaper. Virgilius he considered this settled. Then he informed them of a new job to tackle. Faust told them that the LCA sent them to track down the distortion, which led to Dante talking to Demian during that. It was at this point that Dante realized that their time dilation field within the TT4 protocol caused this, and Yi-Sang confirmed this. They tampered with an already accelerated flow of time from an outsider's perspective, where more time than what was actually spent was leaked. The Class 2 clerical staff confirmed this. It wasn't just on a personal scale, it was within a physical space. It wasn't a static field, it moved all over the manor. Heathcliff added that the TT4 protocol was activated only on special occasions, like when they had plenty of guests, because it was expensive as hell. The clerical staff told them that the time tax for their inflated tax bracket multiplied by the surtax per volume from the physical space covered by Dante's temporal manipulation, which was what led to the insane amount of time tax. Gregor didn't know that this was going to happen. The clerical staff told them that they have 2 payment options to settle this. Heathcliff made it clear that it wasn't as if they had that much arm on them. She then added that they can either pay in cash or by time. Roger wanted to know what she meant by paying in time. As she was about to explain this, an alarm sounded and she was called for an emergency meeting regarding an incident. Limbus Company can send 2 individuals to the meeting to represent them. Dante wasn't sure what to do. Virgilius made it clear that this kind of meeting was one of his responsibilities. This would also help with finding possible solutions to that incident. He wanted Dante to keep the damned dozen under control. Well, except Faust. She was with him. Faust understood. Virgilius told them that if they make another mess while they're gone, only Ryushu will enjoy what comes next. Yeah, she's a masochist. Her reaction confirmed this. It was clearly some kind of gallows that they were in front of, and the rope was tightening around Massot's throat. This was concerning to Sinclair. Yes, concerning to Sinclair, and he asks if this is what they meant by paying time tax. A hanging. The employee corrected him by saying that it's a temporal scale gallows. It measures the exact amount of time owed, and it sucks it right out of them. And that's the short name. The long name is 58 words long. Or was it letters? Dante wanted someone to ask what would happen to Massot. Massot was silent. Sinclair asked worryingly if they were going to kill him. The employee denied this. However, Yi-Sang noted that word was spoken like that usually meant that it's worse than lethal hanging. The employee wasn't sure what would happen, likely sucking up 10 billion arns worth out of Massot. Otis wanted this employee to tell them what he meant. Sinclair asked if it would suck 10 billion arm's worth of hours out of him. And this shocked Don Quixote. The employee mentioned that the generous system where everyone was guaranteed 4 hours a day, according to the T Corp Public Welfare Council, that's the minimum number of hours in a day to guarantee human survival that requires them to live. We're likely to find out what that means soon enough. That doesn't reassure Dante. Thankfully for Masol, this was too much for the machine to deal with, as it says measurement error, which was apparently a rare occurrence. This surprised Ishmael, as the employee pulled the lever out of curiosity, despite not knowing what would happen. He said that it was because this was unprecedented. He had to see what would happen. Even if Massault won the lottery, it wouldn't even come close to making 10 billion, even before taxes. He's not seen anyone with more than 150 hours of debt willingly step up to the gallows. Others would run and let it get worse. Dante asked what was wrong with him. Don Quixote told him to wake up. Yes, telling Massault to wake up and not let himself be hanged by that machine, and he did so. Don Quixote was relieved that he was unharmed, which he confirmed. Gregor suggested that he get down from the gallows, and Virgilius was less than amused by this. What else is new? Faust was being Faust, both glaring in a less than friendly way.